And you're going to start hearing a lot of STEM from us.
Okay.
We actually are very big components, and even Galaxyfest, we're very big components of STEAM. So what you have is STEM is a national word for, or acronym, if you will, for science, technology, engineering, and math.
Okay.
Galaxyfest and us, we actually like to throw in the A for arts.
Nice. I like that.
So in my opinion, you can't have the science, the technology, and the math without the creativity of the arts.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Without art, there's nothing to me. I literally
I like
it's
that.
a big part
Yeah,
of it.
because science, technology, and engineering and math, they're all those things where the books say this is what you do.
Yeah.
This is the way the rules go. 2 + 2 is always 6. Okay. However, when it comes to art creates that new creativity and allows some of that newer designs. I mean, we're looking for kids these days. We're not, but they are looking for kids these days that want to grow into how to grow food on Mars.
Yes.
How to sustain life on Mars.
Absolutely.
How do we get there?
The
how
future.
Do we stay there? What's the pods going to look like, or is it even pods, or whatever? All of this stuff, the rocket engines, all this stuff.
Just get them thinking in that direction more of the science and the arts and the math. I like that.
Right.
I like that more.
So you're going to hear a lot of stuff out of us here in the future coming down to STEM.
Absolutely.
Or STEAM.
Nice.
STEAM.
Yeah.
I like
STEM
the
is more
STEAM.
recognized.
Yeah.
STEAM is kind of one of those things that the STEM guys don't like. But talk to your scientists, talk to you all,
Damn artists.
But yeah, I think you can't do any of it without the arts.
Absolutely.
We need to get a hold of Elon Musk.
And Manitou is such a big arts town anyways.
yeah.
It really is. Very creative, music, art. My daughter's been part of a couple STEM programs.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I really support that. So whatever we can do to help with that, we'd love to.
Yeah.
Yes.
STEM is always cool. We are trying to mix the two of them, which is what's really interesting. How do we take Comic-Con or comics, if you will? How do we take those kind of things and turn it into STEM and support STEM? Well, what it comes down to is Wonder Woman always works as a mentor.
Yes.
Yeah.
She's always a mentor for the girls. Some guys too, I guess.
Yeah.
But she's always a mentor of some sort. So creating that at a younger age can bring you up. I mean, whether it's Superman or Batman, they all are mentors in some way, shape, or form.
Absolutely.
Especially if you follow the history of the comics. I mean, like I said at the beginning, was never really a big comic book person. But if you follow the psychology and the current events and the social economics of comics, they always fit into what's going on today.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Oh, 100%.
That
And if it
voice
helps-
is there, yeah. I always, whenever I was a kid, that really got me into reading more, was reading comics. But then that opened my mind up for all the science and everything else in my life and art, whatever, because it led me into that vein for anything that I know nowadays. And now that's why I still like comic books. I'll still read them.
Take the Space Symposium that we have right here in Colorado Springs. It's international. They come from all over the world. There are I shouldn't probably give out big names, but the people who make airplanes and missiles and rockets and all this other kind of stuff, and they all get together once a year here in Colorado Springs. But if you really dig down to the core of those people who have designed those or designed anything around them or related to it, they all started with Star Trek.
That's right.
Star
Yeah.
Wars,
Sure.
or Journey to the Center of the Earth.
Yes.
I mean,
Absolutely.
If you can
Oh,
imagine
yes.
it, then you're trying to bring your imagination to life in those things.
Exactly.
And the comic books always showed you that you could possibly do it.
Yep.
And sci-fi just influenced like that 60s generation with the Star Trek. Also, the moon landing would be happening around that time too. So that would spark that imagination.
Well, what's interesting, I don't know, you guys, I don't think, you might be, I don't think you guys are old enough to remember, and I'm not either, but I remember reading about it. If you remember the old cars out of the 50s,
Okay.
what did they usually have on the back ends of them?
Big fins.
Big fins,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Do you know what those big fins were designed around? Because of that idea of we can go to Mars, we can be science and technology. And
New frontier, they can go beyond.
Exactly.
Yep.
So all of that from the 50s and the 60s led into, of course, the moon landing and all that kind of stuff.
Well, look
as
at-
a culture that was well
Yeah,
within our...
look at the Batmobile. That was the
my
one
God,
from the
yeah.
TV show was an actual concept car,
It was.
and they turned it into a vehicle for the deal because they didn't mass produce it.
The car
So
was never produced. I think there was only 6 of them ever made.
yeah, And they used it, and it was so futuristic. And people know that's iconic. You know?
Yeah, you see it, you know exactly what it is. You don't even have to be a Batman fan. You know what that is.
Yeah,
exactly.
Oh, my
It's just
goodness.
in the zeitgeist, in the pop culture.
And I see we need more of that in the future, of course, and getting more kids involved and thinking forward thinking again instead of being stale thinking.
I definitely like the idea of rolling arts into STEM.
Yes.
Because any person that's really pushing scientific boundaries has to be creative.
Yes.
For that to work.
Thinking
That's
outside
just
the
way
box.
exactly.
How do you think of something that hasn't been created unless you think outside the box?
Yeah,
art helps that.
And you get influenced by what people are drawing. Heavy Metal magazine, anything in the comic books,
Sure.
all of that stuff is
we
crazy.
still compare that thing of what was shown on Star Trek on the original series. What of that has come true? Well,
The cell phone?
The sci-fi, sci-true, something like that. I forget how the saying goes.
Science fiction, science fact.
Yeah, science fiction, science fact.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
What has come true? What is it? I'm still waiting on the transporter.
Yeah.
Oh, you know it.
I just don't want to end up like the Fly, like Brundlefly. Or anything, but
Exactly.
That's a perfect
I still
example.
want to figure out how I can have an emergency response to go to Indiana and push a button and poof, there I am.
yeah, that would drastic. Think about how that would change the world, though, if you could just. Because I've been reading a book, the Hyperion series. Have you ever heard of that?
I've heard of it, but I'm not familiar with it.
Well, in this world, they have these things called farcasters. Essentially, you can just walk through into another. It's like a transporter.
Oh, Harry
and
Potter.
It just changes like the whole world. Well, they're hidden though. Like the magicians are like hidden in that world, right?
Right.
But in this world, it's just imagine what it would be like if we instead of driving trucks over the highways, we could just be like whoop,
Yeah.
just like
Go
transport
from the
stuff,
warehouse
like
to
with a
the other
transporter.
warehouses. Yeah.
That would change society drastically.
That or food replication.
Yeah,
Food replication's kind of cool too.
yeah.
I never have figured out how they come up with, make me a pina colada. And pina coladas were extinct 3,000 years ago.
yeah.
Who programmed this computer?
They had old recipe books that they scanned in, and they're like, "Oh, okay, database."
You programmed me, master.
Yeah, I like the forward thinking of STEM.
Yeah.
I think that's awesome.
STEM, that's very cool. I'm gonna have to look into that a little bit more. I have some
Yeah.
young ones at home, so
Yeah.
There you
I
go.
appreciate you stopping by and talking to us too, man. It's a lot of
I think
good
that's my cue to
information.
leave.
no.
No,
you can hang out as long as you want.
I was just
Yeah,
saying,
sit
like,
down. You
hey,
know what
thanks
you
for
were
stopping. Yeah.
See why I never want
No.
to step in front of a mic?
No, that's what
all
we're
good.
wanting. So you're
Yeah,
good.
no,
Get me
absolutely.
drunk and you never get me drunk.
It'll be a whole different podcast.
Oh, wow, yeah.
That'd be after hours. Oh, air
No,
quote
if we
after
did drunken
hours.
history, we can do drunken comics.
Oh,
There you go.
Hey,
I like
concept.
that. Comedy
That's a
Central,
good
we're
idea.
hitting you up.
Wow, that was new and original and creative.
But it'd be
Come
like
on, guys, think more out of the box.
this is what happened when Batman fought the Riddler.
So it'd be
Shots.
meaning to the What If series.
Yes.
There you go.
There you go. It would always lead into that. What if they did this?
Yeah.
Drunk.
I don't think there was one about Batman getting drunk in that one. But
No. Not
He
yet.
was addicted to the venom, though.
He
remember
was,
that? Yeah.
and yeah.
Oh, wow.
He was actually addicted to the
Yeah,
venom?
yeah.
It was like a.
That was
like a
actually one of
heroin
my
thing.
favorite runs with Batman. That was Legend of the Dark Knight, I believe.
He crossed over through like Shadow of the Bat and Legends of the Dark Knight.
But
and
that
Batman,
he like
Detective.
dives down
Chronicles.
into a river
Yeah.
to save a girl, and he's not strong enough to lift whatever's on top of her off of her, and she dies. So
And
he
he-
starts taking venom, which is the stuff that makes Bane strong, and gets addicted to it. And then, of course, they try to use that against him, to
Yeah.
work for them.
He has
sort
like
of.
PTSD, and then like after he gets addicted to it, he has like withdrawals and stuff
Yeah.
after they take it away from him.
Is it kind of like when Cap was on ice?
a little bit like that.
Streets of Rage.
But it was actually a really
He was
the,
on
the
ice.
difference is it was an actually good comic.
Yeah.
That run of
Watch your
Captain
mouth.
America. Hey, I love Captain America.
Watch
that
your
run
mouth.
was not great.
Yeah, I love
just
it.
throwing it out there.
That's whenever I was. That was a formidable year for me.
Fair,
You know,
fair.
watch. I had all those brand new. And like,
So I mean,
got
they're
them from
really good,
Safeway.
Brock, and I appreciate your something.
I didn't even think it was a real drug, and until later, it was like, wait a minute.
That's a real thing.
There's real
That's
stuff.
what they meant.
Yeah, it was an ice factory.
You ever do
Hey,
that?
I'm going to let you guys get back to it.
Oh
Cool.
yeah, thank
All
you.
right, man.
Cool.
Well, we appreciate you stopping by.
No, thank you very much.
Yeah.
And thanks for having us
We'll see
too.
if we can find Wonder Woman. She's around here somewhere.
Yeah,
There you
Absolutely.
go. Send
We'll
her
get
our
her
way.
in
Yeah,
soon.
see how much time does she have?
Oh,
As,
whatever.
as often.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever.
All right.
If you find her, she wants to come in. Awesome.
Yeah, she's probably hanging out in her car. Can
Yeah.
you see her? Oh, can you see
No,
her
no,
car?
yeah.
think they're around
we
the
see the car,
corner.
but they're kind of just hanging out.
And we were
by the
already
tree.
talking about that Batmobile that you were talking about.
Yeah.
That is epic.
Well, you've seen the jet out front, right?
Oh,
the Wonder Woman jet?
Oh yeah, that thing is
They
awesome.
all looked. I had to say.
I know, right?
Oh, you got us.
I'm
That was good.
It's invisible. Damn it.
It's not invisible when she's sitting in it.
Thank you, sir.
I was thinking about that because I saw the Wikipedia of Wonder Woman, and it said one of her abilities is flying.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait,
She
are
rides
they
the
counting
wind.
flying like in her jet because it's invisible? So
How
it
can she
looks
take
like she's
somebody with
flying?
her if she doesn't have an invisible jet? Because she had to leave Paradise Island with Trevor.
Yes.
Right.
That's why there's an invisible jet.
But it was like an invisible biplane at first.
But when
no?
they say flying, when they
'Cause
say
it's World War
flying,
One.
yeah,
I'm
it was just
thinking-
invisible plane at
Yeah,
the time.
yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And
But
that's
the-
before we knew the name. It was just called Paradise Island back
Yeah.
then.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
well, how
before.
about we segue into that? How about we start talking about the history of Wonder Woman? 'Cause that's what we're
Absolutely.
here for.
Great
So,
segue into Wonder Woman.
It's a great idea. Really, her first appearance was in All Star Comics number 8,
Yep.
and that was out in October of 1941.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's
Talk about a long time ago. I mean, they're all reaching thousands of issues for all of their main characters at DC, and then Wonder Woman has literally been around since the very beginning. Founding member of the JLA.
Absolutely.
And has grown throughout the years.
Well,
What's
they-
really cool about her is she grows every
Yes.
couple of decades. She'll grow and then develop something new or change things or do something different.
Well,
so.
yeah, I mean, there were a few decades in there, really, where
Many
they,
different incarnations,
yeah,
if you will.
that were not necessarily the best for the character,
Yeah.
especially considering that, like when it was originally designed, the coolest thing about her was she was self-reliant.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, let's get into that a little bit because William Martin Molesden, right? William
Marsden?
William. Easy for me to say. Someone say his name. Someone's
William Marsden.
William
Marsden.
Moulton Marsden.
Marsden.
Yeah, you don't have to say the middle name.
So he is
not an
credited with
assassin.
inventing Wonder Woman, and he for lack of a better word, was a pretty big feminist for his time, and he wanted her to be what you said,
self-reliant.
Over, she was able to literally break the chains, break the ropes, break the bone.
Yeah, so there was, and on that note, like there was a lot of controversy. Like when people look back, they show a lot of like what they thought was bondage related.
Sure, you could go that
but
way.
you could go that way. But really, it was all about her breaking out of those bonds.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, Marsden was such a feminist that he actually had written that he wanted women to run the world.
Well, you know what the theory
Might
is?
be-
It's called disc
Might
theory.
be okay.
Might be okay that way.
Disc theory is basically centers on four different personality traits. One is dominance, one is influence, one is steadiness, and the last one is conscientiousness. And I butchered that
No,
word.
you're fine.
So that was good. Conscientious.
But if you look at all of those, those do round out the human spirit, the human being, whatnot.
Right.
And it depends on which ones that you lead or you. I don't know, or influences you the most, I guess.
Absolutely.
And that's a pretty big kind of a theory for somebody, to come up with and then use the woman as a model. At that point, yeah, that should have been, because we're still, I feel.
And around this time too, women. Sorry to cut you off there, but women were in a place of when all the men were off to war.
yeah.
So women are in a prominent position.
Yep.
So at this time, like you're saying,
Yeah. It should have been a major changing point for us to view equality at that point.
Yeah.
In the
Agreed.
early feminism and everything, and then we're still behind. I feel in
Right.
a lot of ways that we're really just not there, which is ridiculous to me.
And I think some of that was probably, rooted in the 20s and then brought,
Yeah.
people that grew up in that era, like your Marsden, people
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, they saw that.
Wanted to change things.
That's right.
Wanted to switch things up and actually introduce a character because he saw the medium as something that you could really teach. Just like we were talking about earlier. I mean, you could really change a lot of things when people think outside that box.
Agreed.
And really try to expand on things and use the art. And the comic book was a perfect medium for it because they could teach lessons in it.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
that was the big thing is,
Yeah.
that was what
The
he
morality
should-
tales.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Fable, morality parables, if you will.
Yeah.
And that was a big focus for him.
Yes.
If we jump ahead a little bit to the 50s, she was a founding member of the JLA, the Justice League. They took a bunch of characters that just kind of weren't doing well at the time and threw them together, and they fought Starro, the Flash, and there was 5 of them: the Flash,
Well,
Aquaman, Wonder Woman, Martian
The Spectre
Manhunter,
was in there too, wasn't
and
he?
Green Lantern. No,
Spectre was one of the founding members of the old Justice Society.
That
or
was
yeah,
the
Justice
Justice
Society
yeah,
of
yeah.
America from the
Yeah.
from the 40s. Yeah, that was different. Did she showed up in the back issue of one of those, right? That's where she debuted.
Correct.
Yeah. Is that
Yeah.
what you,
The
Yeah.
All Star Comics.
All Star Comics. Yeah, that was with
Sensation
the
Comics. Yeah, her first feature was in